And we're back talking to Olesya and Anastasiia, two people who have had to flee Ukraine because of different invasions. Olesya came to Canada back in 2013 prior to Russia's invasion of Crimea, and Anastasiia more recently after Russia invaded Crimea, or the Ukraine overall. I want to ask you about some of the stories that you're hearing from soldiers. Anastasiia, I know that you have a close experience with a soldier who sadly had to lose his life fighting for Ukraine. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I had a cousin who used to live in Thailand before the invasion. And when it happened, he decided to come back to Ukraine. He was a musician, mostly very artistic person, never served in an army before, but he came back. He was knocking every door to join the army. And he did it. Actually, he succeeded. He had a few honors for his job. And when he died on the east of Ukraine, when he was killed by Russians, on his funeral, the chaplain, like the priest for the groups, military groups, he said that he was fighting out of love and not out of hate. And I think that is a very important message to the world, because Ukraine never wanted the war. We never wanted to kill Russians on a battlefield. But we will stand as long as needed. We will be protecting our families and our land as long as it takes, because we love, and peace is love.
I'm sorry to hear of your loss. It does seem like that's what we're hearing in the West about this battle, is that Ukrainians actually had a motivation to defend their country, and this is why they're doing so well, because they're trying to save their friends, their families, their nation, whereas Russians don't seem to have that same motivation because it's not really clear why this war is
Most
necessary in the
definitely.
first place. At least from a Russian perspective, it doesn't seem very clear, but perhaps I'm wrong. Olesya, you've spoken with countless soldiers. Are there any stories that stand out in your mind about what they're experiencing on the front lines?
Yes, but before that, Anastasia, glory to our heroes. Uh,
Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to Ukraine. Yes, I am right in this age group where we're old enough but young enough to fight. So many of my classmates, many of my university friends, they are on the front lines. And one story stands apart because it was a very it was an eye opener for me. And after that story, I started doing a lot of raising funds and just trying to figure out how do we keep our soldiers alive and what can we do. A friend of mine, we were talking on the phone, on the Zoom, and suddenly I saw that there is a grenade popping out of his pocket. I'm like, why do you carry a grenade in your pocket? And he says, oh, I have two. I'm like, why? I don't want to get into captivity. So one for me and one for them. And I don't know, but they exchanged the prisoners of war, they exchanged the soldiers. And he looked down and he looked up and told me 40% of our soldiers come back home castrated. And I would better die a hero than come back as a castrate. And I couldn't forget this. This haunted me for days and days and days. And I guess, and that's when I was forced to step into the volunteer realm. I didn't, I'm a journalist. I tell stories. I make films. And now I'm learning to fundraise. I'm learning to basically, go and beg for, oh, we need money for drone. We need socks. We need, helmets. We do just anything to keep them alive. Because you hear, these are the real heroes, right? They're fighting evil, not for Ukraine only, but the whole world. And the world doesn't realize it.
Mm-hmm. And they're certainly not following the Geneva Convention rules for wars, where they're taking soldiers. The Russians are taking soldiers as prisoners, and they're castrating men. I mean, that is just unbearable to think about what these Ukrainian men are going through. I want to ask you before I forget here, what is the website for your company if anyone wants to help you? Because you're working on a second documentary, right?
Yes, I am, and it's threadsofhumanity.ca. So Threads of Humanity is the documentary about the war crimes in Ukraine. Please
Okay,
check it
and
out.
we'll be back with more in just a moment.